Well, good evening to each of you this evening. It's good to be here. The last time I was here, I think I was 38 years ago. I was 13 years old, came with my dad, and I sat right over there about where John Slaybaugh was sitting. And I was eating Smarties during church. And I dropped one, and someone behind me picked it up and set it on the bench beside me, and I was a very embarrassed young man. But anyway, I'm glad to see people here that I know. Some of you older ones, probably more than these benches here. These young people are ones that are friends of my children. I know them from Bible school. We live in troubled times. We have always lived in troubled times. It seems like maybe today it's more trouble than it's ever been. He said we're born for this day. This is why we're here. But life has always been hard since the fall of man. Life has always been troubled. It just seems more troubling today. And I don't think that is quite true, however. But you know, as long as I can remember, there has been conflict in the world. At home, I asked them what was the first world crisis they remember. And different ones of you would remember different things. I think the first thing I remember was the Iranian hostage crisis, when a number of U.S. citizens were taken hostage in Iran. But there was the Unabomber, for those of you who remember that, back in the day. Man who made nail bombs to people. There was the Iraq War. There was 9/11. How many of you can, well, put it this way, how many of you were not born yet, and how many of you do not remember 9/11? There's getting to be more and more of those. But I can tell you exactly where I was standing that day when I realized that this was a life-changing event. There was a thing we called the Cold War. You know, things with Russia are not new. When I was a boy, we were sure the world was going to end with a nuclear bomb from Russia. And there was the Russians were coming, and we had to be careful of that. A number of years ago, we were having Christmas at my parents' place, and the whole family was there, and our neighbors are Ukrainians, and they came over to Christmas carol for us on Christmas Day, and someone said, the Russians are coming. And the older half all had a different perspective than the younger half did when we thought the Russians coming. I think something came disconnected. We had a different perspective when we thought of the Russians coming, us as an older generation than the younger generation. But this is all, life has always been troubling. But for the most part, it's out there. You know, it's in Africa. It's the Hutus and the Tutsis, who I don't really know anything about. And they're killing each other, but that's over there. There's ISIS. There's these wars that are in other places of the world. But in recent months, we have had a war in what we thought was a civilized country. You know, somehow we've come to this conclusion that we live in the 21st century, and we don't just go fight each other and beat each other up because we're bigger and we want their land, but that's what's happening. And there are atrocities happening everywhere, but this time it just seemed a little closer to home. This was our culture in a way. This is places, I haven't been to Ukraine, but I've been to Romania. It's similar. I have neighbors who are Ukrainians. It's just a little closer to home. I listened to a podcast by 4 men who are either working or have worked in Ukraine. And Bruce Gansey said he just saw 28 and a half years of work leave the country. A church he'd worked for years to build. And they just left. Mennonite churches just emptied out. Young men of draft age there were being restricted from leaving the country. People who did leave their homes were destroyed. And I heard that there was someone who had a greenhouse with 50,000 plants ready to sell. And he had to leave, and his plants were destroyed. And I said, you know, that sounds like something Christian Aid would have sponsored. And I found out later it was. somebody here helped their livelihood was destroyed. I checked the other day, and currently there are 12 million people who have been displaced. 12 million people. Just wrap your head around that. 12 million people have been displaced. 5 million have left the country. This world is in trouble. And not just the Ukraine. But the leaders of our world are trying to manage wars and disease and inflation and starvation, and the list goes on and on of the troubles around us. And even as we speak, they're worried about a recession and people losing jobs and so on. This evening I'd like to look at three things. I'd like to look at our dilemma. I'd like to look at our duty, and then lastly I would like to look at our hope. Take your Bible and turn to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew 24, beginning in verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So that literally happened in AD 70, when the Romans came and attacked Jerusalem, and they tried to get in, and the Jews fought them off ferociously. The Romans, besieged it for a number of years, and one of the things, the Romans had this big bulwark set up, and they were just ready to breach the wall the next day. And that night the Jews came and broke a wall underneath and burned down their bulwark. That was just one of the things the Jews did. And the Jews fought them off tenaciously, and finally when the Romans got in, they were so angry and so upset with the Jews that they just slaughtered them. And the blood ran in the streets. And they burned the temple, but then they tore it apart rock by rock, stone by stone, to get every bit of gold that had melted between the stones. So what Jesus says here, there shall not be left one stone upon another. They're like, wow, really? And they said, verse 3, And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us then, when shall these things be? And then they ask three questions here. When shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Three distinctly different questions. And then Jesus, as he often does, he rolled all three questions into one answer and leaves us a little confused about which part applies to which, okay? I'll grant you that here tonight. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So when I get an email, if there's a big war starts tomorrow, and you send me an email and say, Here you go, Tony, this is the end of the world, it's coming. No, that's maybe a sign, but Jesus said these things are all going to happen, but the end's not yet. Okay, this is going to happen. And nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And all these are the beginning of sorrows. And then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, and the love of many shall wax cold, but he that shall endure unto the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Go to Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21 and verse 10. Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be in heaven. Verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Those are the days that we live in today. We live in today in days of wars and rumors of wars, of earthquakes. They say there's more earthquakes now than have been for a number of years. There's famine. I heard the other day how many millions of people are dying of starvation right now. Okay, this is currently happening. There are people dying of starvation. There are pestilences. If you haven't heard the C word, that's a pestilence. There are fearful sights and signs. These are not comforting words, people. These are not words of cheer given to his disciples. He said these are bad things that are going to happen. There's persecution. There's people turning on their family. There's lack of food. There's disease. There's death. There's destruction. These are terrible things. You know, war is terrible. We have no clue what war is like. It is a terrible, terrible thing. Our country makes it honorable. The reason every country has had to make it honorable so that people will go and fight. They have to give some reason for you to want to go out and give your life. And so countries go about do that. Every society has done that. Even from David and Goliath. You know, look at what David did. It's glorified. Christians even tend to honor these people. I'm not saying to be dishonoring of our government, but I'm saying war is a terrible thing. People in Ukraine have flocked from all over the world to go over there and help them fight their war and to beat off the brute, to beat off the bully, I guess we call it. And it's war. These people die, moaning and groaning, crying for their mothers. That's what governments have done. And Jesus said, they're going to happen. This is going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And it's going to bring fear. You will be fearful. The words here are fearful, distressed, hearts feeling them. And we'd be sticking our heads in the sand to say that these things do not affect us. That we have not experienced a sense of fear or perhaps anxiety. Bruce Johnson was saying that he had people come to his house, and I think they had 100 people in their house one night, or between 4 houses. And he said people would come and they would put food on the table. They were escaping the blast zones, and he's like, "Here, come eat." He said they would just stand there. He's like, "No, there's food. Here, put food on your plate. Here, put it in your mouth, eat it." They're in shock. These are godly Christian people in fear. This is what happens. We would be sticking our head in our sand to say that has not happened to us. Closer at home, we have shootings almost daily, it seems like, anymore. You know, we have people in our country who say it's a good thing to kill babies. Like, I don't know how they go about construing these thoughts, but it's a good thing. We've had millions of people die from disease, and more millions hurt financially or emotionally from mandates of people who I think probably were well-meaning. But it's been a fearful 2 years in our country. This is reality. This is what is really happening. This is the dilemma that we're facing. This is the world that we live in. So what do we do in times of fear and of distress and when these things are rocking our world? So I never noticed this before, but if you go to Matthew 24, and if you use your powers of observation, can any of you tell me what passage immediately follows chapter 24? Someone want to, I can't hear very good. Someone tell me what chapter immediately follows chapter 24? 25. Okay, it's pretty obvious. It's right there. So what does chapter 25 say? And there's not even an introduction. We don't know if Jesus went directly to this chapter or not. But here it is. So what are we supposed to do? And somewhere along the way, I got this written in my Bible. This chapter is divided into 3 sections. The first one is prepare, the next one is to use, and the third one is to serve. We're going to look at those 3 things tonight. And we're going to read the chapter, though it be in sections. So Matthew chapter 25 and verse 1. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know not neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. Go back to chapter 24 and verse 42. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant whom his Lord hath made rule over his household, to give him meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in the day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour when he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We have here the parable of the 10 virgins. And this parable is a warning to be ready for Christ's return. These are all churchgoers, these virgins are. These are all good people. Maybe even all Christian people. There are 5 that prepare, and 5 who prepare and continue to prepare. Okay? These were not 5 reprobates, but these were all virgins, but 5 continued to prepare and continue to get ready for this day. And so the message was not to the people that did not know what to do. The message was to the people that knew what to do and just were not doing it. This message is about salvation. It's about Christ's return. It's about the possibility of missing out and not being ready when Christ returns. And I'm not a gloom and doom sort of guy. I had meetings the other day and someone said, your messages are filled with hope. And I thought that was a compliment. But you know what? We can miss out. Like, I don't go through life with gloom and doom, but I have personal friends in the ministry who are no longer walking with the Lord and who are living in sin. Men who may have spoken here, I'm not sure. That's a possibility, brothers and sisters. We could lose out. And Jesus is saying, be watchful, be careful. We need to be prepared. And we need to be prepared in our everyday lives too. We can say, oh yeah, I got a good relationship with God, I'm ready to go. But how are we living our everyday life? All of a sudden in the Ukraine, those young men who were of draft age, all of a sudden the Russians started the war, and all of a sudden you can be drafted. And so maybe mom and the younger children can leave the country. Maybe dad can go if he has a family, and you're 19 years old and you can't leave because you're a draft age. Are you ready, young men, if that would be you? Oh, we don't have to worry about that here. Be prepared. Is your lamp burning? When I was a young boy, this was not a great learning lesson. I don't think my dad planned it for anything special. He doesn't even remember it to my knowledge. But one day we were talking about I don't even know the subject. And we had a young man from our church who went to Northern Youth Program. So I was a first grader, and this man was 18. And I remember we would pray for him because he was at Northern Youth Program and he was a missionary. And it was just, we would pray for this young man. And one day in passing, my dad just said, that man is going, we know what he's doing, and his best friend in our church, we weren't quite sure where he's at. And my dad said the other day, they're still that way. The young man that went to NYP is still serving the Lord, and he has a godly family. Are you prepared? If there was a draft in our country, I probably wouldn't be called. I'm probably getting a little too old. But I might be the one that has to go talk to the draft board and explain my position and say, we have a bunch of men in our church, and these are what they believe. And I would vouch for them, or maybe I wouldn't vouch for them. Are we ready? The first section here is that we need to be ready. We need to prepare for the coming of the Lord. Verse number 14. Another thing that Jesus has for us to say here, and this is to you. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, and to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants cometh, and reckoneth with them. And so that he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also that received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he that had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talents in the earth. Lo, there thou hast it is thine. His Lord answered and said to him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gathered where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So in the context of fear and distress and perplexity and all these things that are happening, Jesus said, I want you to use the talents that I have given you to further the kingdom. That is what I want you to do. And he's given each of us different talents. Some of us are gifted musically, some of us are not gifted musically. But some of us are gifted in other ways. And we as a Mennonite church have been gifted financially, for one thing. As I was reflecting on this, it wasn't in my notes, but today I was reflecting that 25, 30 years ago, I remember my dad did a little figuring up of how much interest our 2 little churches there in northern Minnesota was paying on debt. And he was like, we need to get out of debt. This is not good. Like, this is killing you guys. Well, you know what? I don't think there's a lot of debt anymore. I suspect there's probably more money in the bank than, I know there's more money in the bank than there was then. And that's probably true across our churches. What are we doing with that? You know, Matthew chapter 6 is kind of a hard passage. Unless you just take it for what it means, what it says. Matthew 6, verse 19 says, Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Now, this passage is kind of difficult. It's easy. Maybe we'll ask Brother John Slabon, like, so how do we apply this verse? Like, how do we lay up for future needs? My 2 youngest daughters have some special needs, and I kind of suspect they'll be with me all my days. Okay, so someday I won't be able to work, and I will provide for them. So how do I do that? What does this passage mean? But you know what? In light of this parable here of the talent and of the context, Jesus said, in times of distress, use what you have for the betterment of others. There are needs in this world. There are people starving. I understand it's really hard to reach, like it's... So, we have a flood in our area. We had a flood. It's pretty much abated now. It was in the lake, and so it was it rose by inches a day, not by feet a day. It rose by inches a day for 2 months. And from the time it started, when the lake was low in the spring, until it stopped, it came up 8 feet. And there was people sandbagging, and I spent a number of days helping people hauling sandbags. And so Keith's church heard about this, and they sent me an offering to our church to help people who are flooded, okay? Do you know how hard it is to find a needy, or like a really, truly needy person you give money to? And so sometimes we just despair. I mean, people who live on the lake, they have money, obviously. That's why they live on the lake. We're glad we're not rich and live on the lake right now. And so how do you find needy people? And so our default is we give them to Christian Aid. You know, like let them find the needy people. But there's people in this day that, winter's coming. I guess I live in North Minnesota, and it gets awful cold up there. And that Warm a Family box in the Christian Aid newsletter just kind of, you kind of like to put a little extra money there. I understand winter when it's 20 below. I get that. We can help people. There's a lot of people today who need help. And God has given us talents. Are we using those? Are we being profitable? Now, let's go on to the next section here. The next section is, he asks us to serve. Matthew 25 and verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. This is the end of Matthew 24. When is this going to happen? Okay, so when this happens, this is what's going to happen there when I return. And before him shall be gathered all the nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as the shepherd divided his sheep from the goats, and he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. And then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. And then shall the righteous answer and say, Lord, when saw we thee like this? They don't know. How do we know? He says, well, when you came unto me, when you came unto them, you did it to me. So first we have spiritual preparation. Then we have using our things. And now he says, I want you to use your time, and I want you to go serve other people. As you're in this kind of distress and fear and so on, I want you to serve other people. Are we ready to do that? We can't go to the Ukraine to help over there. I don't know the language. I don't live there. But I do live in International Falls. And in International Falls, there was a flood. And there are people who need help. And can we go demonstrate that to those people? So I had a customer call me, and normally our schedule was very full, we're very busy, and I had some work went away, and so this guy called me and said, my house flooded, it's about chest deep, and could you come help me when the flood is over? Well, we had to wait for 3-4 weeks before the water went down for me to come to the basement. And then I called the guys at church, and I said, hey, we have a basement full of mattresses and furniture and chairs and just a mess, and could you all come and help? Sure. I think 10, 11 guys showed up. They come up. And I told these guys, I asked my customers, is it okay if I bring some volunteers? And they're like, oh, absolutely, if you can get them to help. I think the guys from our church are happy to do it. Are we willing to serve? We can serve Ukraine, but can we serve here? Well, yeah, but then I'd have to take a day off work to go help. Well, guess what? Maybe we do. We need to serve. The other night, my sump pump quit. My daughter gets up at 2:30 and says, the basement's wet. Go down, jiggle the sump pump, kicks on, water goes down, except for the puddles around, and my shop vacs at work, and so I have to drive 30 miles to get my shop vac, and I'm thinking all the way to work, there are people who got up every 3 hours for the last 6 weeks to pump out the sandbags around their house to keep their house from flooding. There are people who need help, and we can help them. We are called to serve. And maybe it's not all physical, maybe it's spiritual. We need people to teach Vacation Bible School. I don't know about your church, but it can be a little difficult sometimes to get people to teach Vacation Bible School. We were discussing today, it's harder to get ministers to come for revival meetings. That's why I'm here. Everyone else said no, and I said yes. I was the last guy on the totem pole. But it's harder and harder to find people who will go and serve. And I'm not all critical of that. I think this generation of men have maybe looked a little bit more at their families and say, I shouldn't be gone so much. Leroy Miller was our bishop. He used to talk about going to Florida and playing shuffleboard when he retired. He's like, there's work to be done. And Brother Leroy got cancer, and he kept going. He said, Lord, if you let me finish out my schedule the next 2 years, but then I think he got some more work, and then he's on his way to SMI to teach, and he gets as far as Ohio, and he has to call and says, I am just too sick, I can't come. So he comes back home. That was in the fall. In March, April, we have our ministers meeting, and we want Brother Leroy to preach one last time at the ministers meeting come? He said, I will if I can. Can I have a room right outside of a bathroom? I need to have access to a bathroom. He called the night before and said, I'm too sick, I can't come. He just kept going. He kept serving. 2 weeks before he died, their church accountability team was there. They came and met with him, and they prayed for him, and they thanked him for his years of service, and they blessed him. And the next weekend, while the deacon and his family were singing for him, he went to eternity. It doesn't get much better than that. That's serving the Lord. Are we doing that? Are we serving spiritually? We have youth camp. We have vacation Bible school. You can take people for coffee. You can teach school. Are you available to serve? And Jesus said, if you do not serve, I will not allow you into my kingdom. So our dilemma is that we're in troublesome times. We have our duty. We know what it is. We are to prepare. We are to use our resources. We are to serve others. So what then is our hope? Go to Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21 and verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up their heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Now, what do we do when things are fearful? What do we do when it looks like the stock market's going to crash? You know, that's like all of a sudden they're going, what am I going to do for work? How am I going to feed my family? There's war in Europe. There's war going to take over China's over there rattling it through. What are we going to do? Are we going to be distressed? Are we going to be fearful? Are we going to go into shock? You know, all those things may actually happen to my wife's cousin and his family are serving over in the Ukraine. He's one of the ministers over there. And they escaped in the first part of the war, went to Romania. They're back in Ukraine now. And Abner's wife was saying, she said, you know, a plane would fly overhead or the lights would flicker and our children would grin. There was fear. And she said, we weren't even in the bad spot yet. Our children were scared. There was fear. You know, you may literally need to live for a while. And you may need to stay off the streets physically. But spiritually, we are not called to live in fear. We are called to a different response. Jesus said, and when these things begin to come to pass, all this terror, all these things, when these things begin to come to pass, then lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. It's coming close. It's almost here. It's not, you know, if I'm scared, if I'm trying to preserve myself, what do we say? If someone's curled up in a fetal position, you know, they're curled up in a ball somewhere and they're just over there shaking in the corner. That's a sign of fear. There's bombs flying and you're ducking and running. Jesus didn't say duck and run. He said lift up your head. Your redemption draweth nigh. Look up. It's here. It's coming. This isn't walking around in defeat. This is walking around in victory. This is the most vulnerable way you can be if they're coming down the road with a plane striking the road. You know, you're diving into the ditch to save yourself. And this is the vulnerable way. Jesus says, lift up your head. Your redemption draweth nigh. This isn't a look of fear. This is a look of anticipation. You see all the bad things happening? Maybe it isn't this time, but it's coming. Jesus is coming again. My daughter was at Bible school for all 3 terms this year, and so was her friend. And her friend's mother sent us a picture of her and her daughter after her daughter got home, and her mother just had this look of joy and delight on her face. You know what it's like when you're going to see someone you haven't seen for a long time, and you just can't hardly keep the grin off your face. You're so excited you're going to get to see them. We should be excited. Jesus is coming back. This world is a dark place. It is. And I'm not a gloom and doom kind of guy. I don't go around worried all day about what's happening in life. I mean, if you stop and look at the world around us, we can explain that. It's a dark place. But Jesus is coming soon. I teach at Maranatha Bible school, and this year, for the second term program, Eric Strock, our director, chose a song, and he told the young people, he said, the last 2 years have been years of fear and turmoil in our world. This is before a lot of the wars and turmoil in the last 5 months. He was referring to COVID and there have been, our neighbors live in fear. There's been no doubt about that. Sometimes that's even made its way into our churches. And Eric said, I want to have a message of hope. I want to have a message of joy. This is my response to what's happening in the world around us. And he didn't know what was happening in the next 5 months. And this is the song. I wish I could sing it tonight. I thought there might be enough Bible kids to get up there and do it, but we won't attempt that. Years of time have come and gone since I first heard it told how Jesus would come again someday. If back then it seemed so real, then I just can't help but feel how much closer his coming is today. Signs of the times are everywhere. There's a brand new feeling in the air. Keep your eyes upon the eastern sky. Lift up your head. Redemption draws nigh. Wars and strife on every hand, and violence fills the land. Still some people doubt he'll ever come again. Oh, but the word of God is true. He'll redeem his chosen few. So don't lose hope. Soon Christ Jesus will descend. Signs of the times are everywhere. There's a brand new feeling in the air. Keep your eyes upon the eastern sky. Lift up your head. Redemption draweth nigh. The exhortation tonight is not about the fear and distress. The exhortation tonight about is we are children of the King. And there's something going to happen. And it's going to be a grand event. And I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know if the Crees are right or the odds are right or we're all wrong. But it's going to happen. And Jesus is going to return. And it's going to be glorious. I'm going to go home. It's going to be wonderful. But you know what? If you're not prepared, then all of a sudden this message is not a message of hope. I preach this at home. A message of hope. I'll say this carefully. But there was some people in our church, a person in our church, who flipped out mentally because he could not handle the stress of Jesus coming back. And he didn't know if he was ready. And he was fearful. And I talked to him the next day. He was talking. And I said, I'm the one that did this, didn't I? I'm the one that triggered this. Well, yeah. I said, well, you don't have to be fearful. I guess it wasn't the point of the message to be fearful. The point of the message is there's hope. Jesus is coming again. We can live in anticipation of that. And so I'm here tonight to proclaim a message of hope. But if that strikes fear to your heart, whether you're young or whether you're old, we need to have a chat with the Master about that. Let's pray. Lord, we are so grateful that we can be your children. We are so grateful for this message of hope tonight, the word you gave to us, that when we see these things of fear and distress, we should lift up our heads. The return is imminent. Help us to live like that each day. And Lord, tonight, if there is someone here who is not ready for that, and they know it, Lord, would you give them grace to make those things right? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'm going to give an invitation tonight. Again, this is a message of hope. That's the point. And I'd like to sing the song, I Have Decided to Follow Jesus. And I'm going to sing all 4 verses, not because I want to drag on the invitation, but because I want to get to the last verse, okay? And if you want to come tonight, and you want to meet with someone, and you would like to make sure that you are prepared, ask you to come forward. Perhaps you can sit on these outside benches here, or wherever there's room here, that would be fine. Someone will meet with you afterwards. But when we get to the last verse, I would like us all to stand and to sing it as from our heart. So the first verse is, I have decided to follow Jesus. If you need to make something right tonight, you come. So no one join me, the cross before me, and then the last verse, saying, glory, glory, oh hallelujah. Let's prayerfully sing. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. Though no one joins me, still I will follow. Though no one joins me, still I will follow. Though no one joins me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. The cross before me, the world behind me. The cross before me, the world behind me. The cross before me, the world behind me. No turning back, no turning back. Then glory.